Okay, I'm going to talk through a spreadsheet that I created to talk about the pajamas efforts and how much time is left. This is rough, and I'm going to go through kind of the whole sheet as an overview and then talk about some of the math I'm doing and how we can perfect this. It's definitely not correct, I don't feel, but this gets us into a place where we can start talking about some of the knobs and dials that make up these predictions. So along the left, we have each component. We have the component research status as the first thing. This is important because the ones that are done means they can go through component migration with the whole org. The ones that still don't have their research started are ones where we still have to invest sometimes a full release to figure out all of the migration guides, as well as how many times it actually appears in the code base. So we have links to each epic for those if you want reference. So these total, the next section is in dark gray. This is the whole backlog analysis. So open versus closed issues. In GitLab, the closed issues here and this open issues column, I've added 3 additional columns based on some additions from the team. So these are issues we know will be created and ones we're guessing will be created. And these are, I put swag on them. They're just wild guesses. Currently, they're like educated wild guesses. We do actually have to do the research to know how many. So what we get from there is the total open issues and the percentage of the backlog complete off of closed versus total, including all of the upcoming. So what I wanted to do though was use what IP had let me know about the component complexity. So he went through and he rated them from low, medium, and high. And what I did was I translated that complexity into a complexity factor. So if it's low, it's got a factor of 1, medium is 2, and high is 3. This is where, as I do the math after, I think that this can be improved and have better fidelity. I think maybe 1 through 5 would give us more accurate guesses on how big this thing is or when we're actually done. So this model can be changed. We can easily change these and start seeing different numbers in these velocity columns I've created. So moving on to that, given that we know how many open issues there are and the complexity factor, I've modeled 3 different ways to determine the total time to close all of the issues that we have here. The first one, I used our value stream metric as, and you can see down below is where I'm kind of doing the math on some of these. So the median time to close all of our issues, if I open that in value stream, I was looking on the pajamas integrate label from January the 1st to March 31st. And the issue time open, like from the time the issue is created and the time the issue was closed, was 2 weeks. I wasn't able to do time issue assigned to issue closed, which I think would have been more accurate here. What this is also doing is I've turned it on to filter by start date. So these are only the issues that were generated by our team during that time and closed during that time. So these are the more recent issues. When I was running it before, we had issues that were closed after 1,000 days open. So I just did the analysis on around 150 issues within that were opened up and closed in Q1. So I took that median time to close of 2 weeks. I translated it into the, for my velocity column, I'm using the amount closed per week. And for this one, this is with 1 engineer. So I'm able to then multiply by the complexity factor and that value stream number and get the total number. So 5 issues times the 0.5 velocity, which is 1 engineer per week closing half an issue, times N11, which is the 1 factor of complexity. So move that down, it gets us to 4878 total. And then weeks till done is taking the total engineers, the total weeks that are done, dividing it by the engineers that we were using. The way I got to 50 engineers was there was a goal of 300 issues in Q1 and a per engineer goal of 6. So if we took that 300 divided it by the 6, we get down to that 0.5. and all of these numbers, I may have done something wrong, so please pop in if if there's something I can fix. So value stream puts us at around 97 weeks, 1.88 years. I modeled it again using the actual velocity of issues closed, which is in Q1, 297 issues were closed. And that took me to a velocity of 24.8 per week for the whole org. And so doing the math from there, same thing, total issues open times that velocity. And I divided it by the total engineers because that value was across the whole org. And then I divided it by the complexity factor. So, and filled that down. That surprisingly got right in the same level, around 98. And then I did it with the Q2 planned velocity, which was if we do the 200 issues in Q2, it's a little bit slower. But I think what we're seeing is these higher velocity columns are adding, in the mediums are adding maybe too much to this number. And so I think that the complexity factor could be refined and we could start getting closer on this. So with that final Q2 velocity, it would be like 2.81 years. So that feels really huge. And so I think that if we go and we look at this in a bit more depth and talk through some of these knobs and dials, like I mentioned, complexity factor, the total time to close. I was thinking also of maybe mapping, doing like a query per component. And then we look at, okay, we said the spinner was low and we noticed, and we got like an actual velocity for how many we closed. And that could help us map what a low complexity means versus a high. That said, we have front loaded all of the low complexity work to go really fast. So we are going to slow down a lot more when we get into these bigger components that have a lot more moving pieces. So that's the overview. Hope that helps explain sort of where my head was at building this. And it's been no like way done, but I think this is a good starting point for trying to get to that. I want to know too, like, when are we done? And like predicting that done date is important to me as well.